Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Planning and Highways Committee. I will hand you over to Abby to announce the housekeeping arrangements.
Thank you, Chair. In the event of the fire alarm sounding, please take instruction from staff and stewards. The assembly point is at Tudor Square. Please can I request everyone to switch mobile devices to silent mode so as not to disturb the conduct of the meeting. The meeting today will be webcast and the recording will also be available for people to view later through the Council's website. It is also possible that Sheffield Live TV will record and rebroadcast this meeting. Whenever the meeting is open to the public, photography, video and sound recording of the proceedings is permitted. However, the Chair has discretion to withdraw or suspend this permission, for example, if the recording is disrupting the conduct of the meeting or is being undertaken in a manner which could capture personal information, or in the event that a member of the public participating in a meeting objects to being recorded. Thank you, Chair.
I will now ask each member in turn to introduce themselves, beginning with myself. I'm Councillor Mike Chaplin. I'm a councillor for Southey Ward, one of two joint chairs, and today it's me that's chairing the meeting.
Good afternoon, I'm Alan Woodcock. I'm Councillor for East Ecclesfield and Co-Chair of the Planning Committee.
Hello, I'm Nikki Belfield. I'm Councillor for Firth Park Ward.
My name is Mark Whittaker. I'm one of the councillors for Stocksbridge and Upper Don. Thank you.
Good afternoon, my name is Janet Riddler and I'm another councillor for Stocksbridge and Upper Don.
My name's Mary Lee. I'm a councillor for Darnell Ward and I'm substituting for Tony Downing today.
Good afternoon, I'm Marion Elliott, councillor for Gleadless Valley.
I'm Henry Nottage, councillor for Hillsborough Ward.
Glynis Chapman, councillor for Mosborough Ward.
Cliff Woodcraft, councillor for Fulwood Ward.
Yeah, I'm Richard Williams and I'm a member for the Stannington Ward.
Thank you, everyone. I'm now going to ask officers to introduce themselves, starting with Dinah.
Hello, I'm Dinah Hope. I'm the Service Manager in Development Management.
Okay, yes, hello everybody. My name is Andrew Burton. I work in Development Management for Sheffield City Council and I'm the team leader for the North Area team. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Hull. I am the team manager for the City Centre and Major Projects team.
Hi, I'm Mark, Council Highways Officer.
Good afternoon, I'm Vicky. I'm a Planning and Highways lawyer.
And I'm Abby Hodgetts. I'm Democratic Services along with Alan Harris.
Thank you, Abby. We've got three councillor apologies this afternoon. They are, as mentioned from Mary, Councillor Tony Downing, Councillor Gary Weatherall and Councillor Nigat Basharat. I don't believe we've got any more at this time. So on to item 3, exclusions of the press, public and press. We have no reason to do that today. Item 4, declarations of interest. Are there any members who wish to declare an interest in any of the items of business on the agenda? Janet.
Thank you, Chair. About a year ago, before I sat on this committee as the local councillor for Stocksbridge and Upper Don, I objected to the outlined planning application regarding Hollin Busk, and although I feel that I could take part in this reserved matters application relating to that original application with an open mind, understanding that the principle for the development has already been established, I feel that due to a potential perception of bias, it would be right for me to not take part in the discussions nor in the voting on that item. So when that comes up, with your leave, Chair, I will withdraw from from the bench. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Councillor Woodcraft.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so with regard to item 7A, I used to work in the computer centre, and if I wasn't cycling in, I would park my car where this building is proposed to be. I have no emotional ties to that anymore, so I propose to sit.
I'm sure your work contribution there was very useful, though, Cliff, and thank you for bringing that to our attention. Right, if there are no more declarations of interest, we'll move on to item 5, which is minutes of the previous meeting. Are members happy to approve them as a correct record? These are the minutes of the meeting on the 10th of December for the Planning and Highways Committee. I will take silence to mean yes, we're in agreement. Item 6, site visits. The date for the next site visit is in members' diaries, and it will be Monday the 10th of February this year between 10 o'clock and 12 o'clock. Item 7, applications under various acts and regulations. We have 2 applications to hear today. The first is item 7A, planning application number 24/02255/full, land adjacent to Hounsfield Road, Leavygreave Road and Upper Hanover Street, Sheffield S3 7RF, and that's on page 15 of the agenda. And I'm going to ask Sarah Hull to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. I hope that passes. So the site is comprised of 2 parcels of land. The main parcel is located to the south of Leavygreave Road and is a triangular parcel of land, as you can see in the image above. This parcel of land is bounded by Upper Hanover Street, Hounsfield Road and the pedestrianised Leavygreave Road, which forms part of the pedestrianised Gold Route. And this is where the proposed 5-storey building is to be sited. On the opposite side of Leavygreave Road is a rectangular parcel of land, and it's proposed to site a pocket park in that area of land there. This is the aerial image of the site. As you can see, it's a dense urban area. The site is currently occupied by the computer science building, which is to be retained, a low-rise 2-storey brick building to the front corner, which was formerly used by Sainsbury's. It also has 3 historic terrace properties on it and a car park. The areas to the north and northeast of the site are predominantly characterised by modern university buildings, whilst the areas to the south and southeast of the site have a more historic character and comprise the Hanover Conservation Area and a number of listed buildings. This is an image of the site taken from close to the junction of Upper Hanover Street with Glossop Road. You can see the 2-storey building which takes up the majority of the photograph is the former Sainsbury's building, and that's to be demolished. Beyond that you can see larger university buildings which are modern in character. And then to the left-hand side of the screen you can see the historic buildings which form part of the Hanover Conservation Area. You can also note the listed Arts Tower which the site offers views towards at present. This is a view taken up Glossop Road, so the corner of the site is just visible to the right-hand edge of the screen. It's that 2-storey brick building and the historic conservation area. You can see the proximity of the site to that conservation area and the list of buildings. So the row of properties on the left-hand side of the screen, the 3-storey properties there are listed. This is a view up Upper Hanover Street. Again, you can see the modern university buildings formed by the Information Commons and Jessop's West. There's no distinct one character which defines that area of university campus. This is a view taken up Hounsfield Road with the site on the right-hand side of the screen. You can make out the historic row of terraces just beyond the building in the foreground, and those terraces are proposed to be removed. They aren't within the conservation area and they aren't listed, and their removal has previously been approved through a prior notification application. This is a view up Hanover Street towards the University roundabout, with the site on the left-hand side. The trees shown within the site comprise of 8 London plane trees, and they are proposed to be removed as part of the development. This is a view taken from Leavygreave Road towards the rear portion of the site, which comprises of a car park, and you can also note those trees to the left-hand side of the screen are the ones that are proposed to be removed. The building to the right-hand side of the screen, that lighter coloured masonry building, is the computer building, which is proposed to be retained. The final image is taken down Leavygreave Road, looking towards Upper Hanover Street. To the left of the screen, where the railings are, is an existing pocket park, and beyond that, which is quite difficult to make out, there's some site hoardings, and that is the location of the new park, which is to be combined with the existing park to make a larger urban park. This shows the site layout. The building is located parallel to Upper Hanover Street and wraps around the computer centre to be retained. The footpath is to be widened on Upper Hanover Street. This shows the proposed ground floor layout. The main entrance is towards the corner of the building and access from Leavygreave Road from the pedestrianised Gold route. At ground floor, the building comprises of laboratories and then collective collaborative spaces, and those are highlighted in the purple colour. This is the proposed first floor. The lighter green colour towards the front of the site is one of the proposed laboratories. As you can see, it's a very large space, and then the areas to the rear of that are sort of back of house rooms. This is an elevation of the building showing the view from Upper Hanover Street. You can make out the scale of the building in relation to existing buildings. So to the right-hand side of the screen is the information commons, and you can see that this building is set slightly lower than that building, and then you can make out the scale of the heritage assets in the conservation area to the left-hand side of the screen. The building facade is formed from angled glazed cladding system with some solid anodised aluminium panels and some mesh panels in a bronze colour, with a glazed ground floor and a green wall as well at ground floor level. The angled facade returns around the sides of the buildings on Leavygreave Road and on Hounsfield Road before transitioning to this to a more a flatter panel, which will be comprised of a mesh anodised aluminium bronze panel to match that on the angled facade. These are some more elevations showing the relationship of the angled facade with the rear of the building. And again, taken another view of that relationship looking down Hounsfield Road. This is a CGI of the building, demonstrating the angled facade and the flat panels to the side and the rear. It also shows the relationship with the existing buildings within the conservation area. This is a CGI taken from Upper Hanover Street, and this is a CGI taken from Leavygreave Road with a sort of aerial view. Again, you can sort of see the relationship with the existing computer science building, and you can see the relationship between the angled facade and the flatter panels. This is an aerial photograph of the site taken during the summer months when the trees are in full leaf, so you can understand the extent of their canopy and the relationship that they have with the site. This is the root protection area of those trees if they were to be retained, and it's just useful to understand how much of the site they take up. It's approximately a quarter to a third of the site taken up by the root protection areas of those trees. This is an image of the proposed park, so part of it is within the red line boundary of this site, and that's the area to the right hand side of the screen, but it's proposed to be combined with the existing pocket park and a new pocket park which is to be built following demolition of an existing building to create this larger urban park which comprises predominantly hard landscaping with some tree planting and softer landscaping, and also a cycle hub within that area. This is a section through that park which just demonstrates the land levels, which will be accommodated through a series of ramps within the space. And then this image shows, the red dots on this image show proposed tree planting within the replacement tree planting. So the cluster of red dots there is the pocket park, which is to be supplemented with tree planting. And then that planting is also to be undertaken within the wider university estate. And this is another image of the even wider university estate with the proposed tree planting illustrated there for reference. The proposal is for a 5-storey building which will consolidate the existing laboratory functions across the university into a single site, creating a super lab facility. It represents a significant investment of approximately £86 million and will create state-of-the-art facilities for the university which will strengthen their presence within the city. In terms of policy, a small part of the site, which is the front corner where the Sainsbury's building is within a mixed-use area, but the majority of the site is within an education institution area, with education being one of the preferred uses, and so the proposal does comply with land use policies. As can be seen from the images, the proposal is for a contemporary building which has a striking design and is being designed as a landmark architectural set piece. The site can be considered to form a gateway to the university campus area, which features an eclectic mix of modern buildings of similar scale to the proposal, focused around the central pedestrianised gold route formed by Leavygreave Road. No one style dominates in the area, and in this context, the precedent for a unique landmark building has been set, and the proposal will add another landmark striking building into the area. The proposal is, however, also viewed in the context of the Hanover conservation area, which is to the south of the site, and there are numerous listed buildings within that conservation area to the south and to the southwest of the site. The character is predominantly Victorian-style buildings of red brick materiality. The proposal includes the removal of non-designated heritage assets in the form of the terraces on the site, but as mentioned previously, that has already been approved through a prior notification application. Viewed in the context of the conservation area and the list of buildings, the architectural style and massing will contrast with the traditional form. However, the colour palette has been selected to try and tone with the red brick of the surrounding buildings. The building will be visible in long-range views of the heritage assets, and it's been concluded in the officer report that there will be less than substantial harm to the heritage assets. However, as previously mentioned, the site is viewed within the context of the university campus, and the precedent for landmark buildings has been set within the area. The MPPF requires the balancing of any less than substantial harm against the public benefits of a scheme, and in this instance, the proposal will lead to a high-quality, sustainable development that will have a significant economic benefit in terms of economic investment and jobs for the city as a whole, and it's concluded that the public benefits outweigh the harm in this instance. In terms of the trees, the proposal will lead to the loss of the 8 London plane trees within the western boundary of the site. Although the trees are within the site, they do form a street tree function because of their proximity to the highway and their visibility from the highway. They are identified as category B trees, and they are significant in terms of their group value and the visual amenity that they offer. There's also a silver birch within the site, more centrally located in the site, which is proposed to be removed, and that is a category C tree. There have been numerous representations received expressing concern about the loss of the trees, including objections from the Sheffield Street Tree Partnership and from the Sheffield Trees Against Tree Action Group, who've objected to the loss of the trees. The position and scale of the trees is such that the university consider that they cannot be retained if a building that meets their requirements in terms of scale is to be constructed. And the image that I showed you previously demonstrates the extent of their canopy. I'll just go back to that so you can see that. So you can see the extent of the canopy, which would severely constrain the size of this urban brownfield plot. In response to concerns about the loss of the trees, significant mitigation has been proposed in terms of replacement planting. So firstly, 8 street trees are proposed to be planted. Ideally, these would have been on the streets immediately surrounding the site, but there are significant underground constraints and services which mean that it's not physically possible to put trees within those streets surrounding the site. And so the applicant, alongside Amy, has taken some investigation works and gone out and done site visits to see where trees could be accommodated within the vicinity of the site, looking first closely at the site and then spreading outwards. Ultimately, they have found 8 workable street tree locations, and those are set out within the supplementary report. On the first page, there are some images which illustrate where those street trees are proposed to be placed. Although the images are quite small, you can make out on each of those 6 images a small tree, and that's where the trees are to be planted. Essentially, those locations are on the University Square roundabout, on Bolsover Street, just off the University roundabout in front of the flats, and then in 4 locations on Upper Hanover Street to the south of the site and to the south of the junction with Glossop Road, and on the opposite side of the road to the application site. In addition to the street tree planting, the proposal includes the addition of 46 trees to be planted within the wider university estate, and those were those red dots which were on the slides here. So these are the wider university planting. Additionally, there's a green wall proposed at the ground floor of the building. There's shrub planting around the building in large containers, and there's the pocket park as well. So whilst the loss of the trees is regrettable, on balance, the mitigation proposed is considered to be acceptable, and will allow the development of this urban plot. In relation to ecology, the proposal will be subject to the statutory 10% net gain condition, so details will be secured through that condition, but it's indicated that it's likely that the net gain will be through the tree planting within the wider university estate. There are no notable habitats or species on sites, and habitat boxes are to be secured via condition. The Section 106 also will secure a 30-year management and maintenance plan of the improvements in terms of the pocket park, tree planting and the wider tree planting, to make sure that they are retained for that period of time. In relation to highways, the proposal involves a loss of 30 spaces, which is acceptable given the highly sustainable location of the site. A secure cycle hub is to be provided within the park area, and that will provide a minimum of 40 cycle spaces, along with some visitor cycle spaces as well. A contribution will be made to Simca for bus stop improvements and tram stop improvements, and there'll also be passenger information displays within the building. In terms of the bus stop improvements, that is the consolidation of 2 existing bus stops into one, and that's been requested by the bus operators to provide a more logical service, I believe. And the 15,000 will go towards tram stop improvements. Although this contribution is less than was originally requested by Simca, conversations in the application process between the applicant and Simca landed on this figure as being acceptable, and ultimately it's considered that it's a proportionate contribution towards the improvements within the area. To summarise, the officer recommendation is for approval subject to a Section 106 to secure the Simca contributions and a 30-year maintenance plan as previously discussed. And I just draw members' attention to the supplementary report, which is relatively long. I'll try and keep it brief. So the first page relates to the confirmed locations of the street tree planting, following those further discussions with Amy. And then there's a table on the following page which sets out those locations in a little bit more detail, along with the proposed species to be planted within those locations. There is also reference to some additional work which has taken place with regards to the campus tree planting proposals of the 46 trees. Essentially, there were some concerns raised by the Sheffield Street Tree Partnership about the suitability of some of those locations for tree planting. And so some further work has been done to consider the suitability of those sites in more detail. And it's been concluded that the proposals are appropriate. And regardless of that, there is a condition which requires final details of the tree planting, and it does allow some flexibility to agree alternative locations should that be necessary. The supplementary report also has some further highways information in that, and I'll let officers I'll let members read that. Ultimately, it includes the requirements for some further highways conditions which are set out in the report. They include conditions relating to a requirement for details regarding the structural impact of the build on the highways, impact on the tram route, provision of the cycle hub within the park, provision of a travel plan, wheel washing details, and the fact that no door should open over the highway. There's also some amendments to the heads of terms to include the financial contribution of the bus stops within the heads of terms, because previously they were secured through a condition. And there's also been a additional representation received from a councillor who raises concerns about the loss of the trees and the fact that he considers those trees should be retained and the footprint adjusted to allow the trees to be retained. Then finally, there's just a range of minor rewording to several conditions that I won't go into great detail about at this point, but I can clarify any of those matters in members' questions if necessary. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sarah. I would just say one thing on the tree table. It would be nice, in addition to the Latin names, to know what they are in English. There were wars fought over the Bible being translated into English. It would be nice to have the same, have trees showing the same. Perhaps respect is not the right word, but it would just be nice to know what those replacements are. Before I call in speakers to make representations, I noticed that one of the screens is down today. Can't be fixed today, so that's why we're just working on the screen that's on the opposite side. Okay, I'm going to call John Johnson, who wishes to speak against this application. If you'd like to come to the microphone at these two desks here, and you can press the button to your right, and you have up to 5 minutes to put your case.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My name's John Johnson. I'm here to speak on behalf of STAG, which I'm the Sheffield Tree Action Group, of which I'm the co-chair. These representations are on behalf of our members and a significant amount of messages that we've had on social media with regard to these particular trees. I'd like to welcome the work that's been done so far to provide some protection, particularly to the group of plane trees that we're talking about on Leavygreave Road, which are facing destruction if, and I stress if, these plans do go ahead, given some of the reports that are circulating about the state of university finances at the moment. There's no clarity in the paperwork about the progress of this application in terms of whether it's actually going ahead, so please forgive my ignorance on that one. But it's good that the Sheffield Street Tree Partnership and Highways seem to be working together with similar goals on this, and I note recent communications from council officers in support of the clauses which have been written in since previous STAG and SSTP submissions. Also worth noting, one of the points that was made earlier, the AWA report, which was put on the planning site on the 10th. They're the same people that did the original biodiversity report, I believe, and worked for the university, so the conclusions are perhaps not surprising. This is a multi-million-pound project, obviously, and these are just a few inconvenient trees. We've heard that plenty of times before. I hope this committee will proceed in light of interventions from Olivia Blake MP and other groups, and general public concern in support of the climate emergency, which the council have signed up to, and the city's 2030 net zero goals. So I'm here to reiterate, in the light of that latest AWA report, that both the SSTP and STAG have significant concerns about the biodiversity net gain claims and proposed replanting sites which have been put forward, and the species selection, as you yourself, Chair, have just pointed out. Some of those Latin names are for things that are no more than bushes. Several of the things that have been proposed to be replanted, Magnolia stellata, if you're keen gardeners, you'll know that that's just a bush, and some of the other ones are not trees either. So the Tree Partnership haven't had a chance to consider the latest report yet. They're meeting next week. And this matter will be given urgent priority. I can assure you at that meeting we'll be making representations there as well. Those trees were there when I did my law degree at Sheffield University in 1982, and they're still there now, and they do provide a very important visual amenity as well as the environmental services they provide. I hope the committee will agree that the trees are a valuable asset to the city, part of the green corridor in an area where there's not a lot of other green, and they deserve to remain, if not because it's a precedent for future planning applications where powerful developers want to get their own way with regard to environmental inconveniences. So the clauses that are written in so far do provide some certainty in terms of the trees' continued existence up to the point where they get destroyed, but I would ask that you consider possibly the imposition of some tree protection orders for those trees to provide some additional certainty, bearing in mind we are still in a position that the trees don't get cut down until a contract is let. Note that wording in the contract, and also concerns about any future plans for development of the Favell Street site where some of the replanting has been proposed. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, John. If you'd like to leave the microphone on, and then I can ask Julian Stevenson to come and put the case for this application. Good afternoon, Julian.
Good afternoon, Chair, members, and the committee and officers. I'm Julian Stevenson from Montague Evans. I'm a planning partner. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today on behalf of the University of Sheffield in support of the proposed Central Teaching Labs building. University plays a vital role in the overall success of the city centre, raising the city's profile both nationally and internationally as a result of its excellence in both teaching and research. The university is currently ranked 105th in the global rankings and such attracts talented staff and students from around the globe. In addition to academic excellence, the city benefits significantly from the GDP generated by the university. As of July 2023, the university employs about 8,600 staff, 30,000 students, and generated an income of £851 million. Investments such as the Central Teaching Labs building are vital to sustaining and growing this positive impact on the city. Providing a high-quality, sustainable and welcoming campus, key component of the university's future success. So this is not just about academic buildings such as this. The proposed Central Teaching Labs buildings forms part of a comprehensive state renewal plan which has been going on for many years, which follows from the success of the Diamond in 2015 and Wave in 2022, which the university is very grateful for member support. It's increasingly, though, a competitive market for students, staff and investment, completing globally, just not even locally or nationally, and it needs this ongoing support from the city. So, about the facility itself, it's basically to consolidate teaching, not research space for the faculties of science, medicine, dentistry and health, right at the heart of the science campus, so it's really very much location specific and identified for redevelopment since 2015 as part of the previous university master plan, which is about to be renewed. The site also is highly accessible, as discussed in the committee report. It will deliver state-of-the-art, flexible, multifunctional space, providing high-quality teaching laboratories to support the range of scientific disciplines simultaneously. Development represents investment of approximately £86 million and will enhance university's standing as a leading global institution. It's really important this can actually compete globally against other universities to get it back into the top 100. The development will support about 720 jobs and £37 million in GVA to the local economy. And also, more importantly, given the challenges we all face in the local economy, £21 million worth of wages. Design is a very high quality, created by BVN in 12 and subject to extensive design consideration over 8 pre-application meetings. Primary vision is to actually have it as a really open building, a shop window to teaching, and very much visible to Upper Hanover Street. This should actually make sure that the university continues to integrate very much with its surroundings. Unfortunately, as part of this development, 13 trees will have to be removed, all of which are located on the university-owned land, and that's really been very carefully considered over the last 2 years. We haven't treated this lightly at all. So how's that been dealt with? Firstly, in terms of the 8 trees on the main part of the site, those will be re-provided as discussed in the committee report. We've identified 13 viable locations out of which those trees will be replanted, and that's really, really important to actually make sure we have some good quality specimens which actually continue to actually contribute to trees, within the city centre. The maintenance will also be guaranteed for 25 years. In addition, the proposals include the planting of 12 trees in the new combined pocket park and 33 trees on university-owned land across the estate. This is a really significant net improvement. We actually have also considered the BNG position, biodiversity net gain, which I'm sure members are very much aware of. The calculation which has been done is it should lead to 14.1% improvement in BNG, and that actually excludes those BNG values attributed to the 8 street trees. So it's not just a case of what we're doing on site, which is largely a car park apart from those trees, but also what we're doing off site as well. So we think that's a really, really exceptional performance. With this net gain of 40 trees to be planted in Sheffield, we think there are going to be significant environmental and social benefits scheme. There's been quite a lot of discussion about what trees they are and what planting is. And
Julian, you're coming up right.
I know,
Got about 5 seconds left. If you could
I'm on to my final sentence, so apologies for that. The one final point to make really is actually on the pocket park itself, because what we have got there is a combined very much green space rather than the hard space we had before in the earlier master plan. So, in summary, thank you, sir. We really urge you to grant planning permission for the building, which aligns with local and national policies for sustainable development, education and economic growth. So thank you.
Thank you, Julian Stevenson. Okay, I'm going to ask Sarah, do you have any comments or concerns that you want to address from the remarks that were made by the 2 speakers?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just keep it brief. In response to the comments made by John Johnson, obviously we acknowledge that the loss of the trees is regrettable. We have highlighted the mitigation that is proposed to offset the loss of those trees. Reference was made to a tree preservation order for the trees, but obviously that tree preservation order would conflict with the development proposed through this application. It wouldn't be possible to keep those trees and develop the site in the way shown through this application, so I just wanted to highlight that to members. And then finally, with regards to the proposed replanting strategy and the concerns that were raised with regards to that, just to highlight that condition 21 does explicitly state that 46 new trees shall be planted, and it does offer a scope for agreeing alternative locations, and it does ask for the planting specifications, which include species types and size, etc., to be agreed first. I'd also draw attention to condition 9, number 9, which has been amended in the supplementary, and that's quite a key condition really in terms of the loss of the existing trees. And it essentially states that those trees that we're considering shall not be removed until a number of requirements have been met. So the first of those is that provision has been made to replace the trees, so that's in terms of the street trees, so we'd need evidence that had been agreed with Amy before the trees could be removed. And in addition to that, we'd require evidence that the relevant university board has approved the expenditure for the delivery of the project, so this will stop the trees just being cut down with potentially the site then sitting empty for a number of years. And finally, the final stipulation in that condition is that the development should then be begun within 12 months of the trees being removed. Again, to make sure that the trees are removed for a purpose, and that purpose is the construction of the building rather than just their loss and then the site to sit empty for a period of time.
I would also add it might be prudent not to chop them down when they're in blossom, because that can set lots of hairs running, as I know from experience in the ward I represent. The first speaker, John Johnson, mentioned magnolia bushes, but I'd been referring to the Latin names of what I thought were trees in the table that's on the supplementary. Those are trees. Yeah. And is the Pinus sylvestris a form of pine tree?
Yeah, so I did look these up before because I thought that question might come up. So where is it? I'm sure someone will have more knowledge of trees than I do in terms of the Latin names, but I believe that I probably can't even pronounce it correctly, the Quercus robur, they're oak trees. The Pinus sylvestris is a Scots pine, I believe. And I believe the first one's mentioned, the Betula imani, or some kind of birch tree. And I can't recall the others, but they're all native trees.
They're all native to this country,
yeah.
Species. Well, that's good. Okay, I'm going to open it up to. I can't take any more now at this point. John, you've had your opportunity to speak, so I'm going to open it up to members' questions. Yeah. Sorry, did you say it's an observation? I'll let Sarah respond to that.
Thank you, Chair. I believe that condition 9 that I've just referenced in the supplementary prevents the removal of the trees until one of those points that I mentioned has been removed, so I don't think it will be necessary really to add a temporary TPO on the trees.
And if this application were to be passed today and we get to the end of 3 years and nothing has happened, then the application then becomes out of date anyway, doesn't it? So I would have thought the university have brought this here with some serious intent and do want to develop the site, regardless of what their current financial position is. I'm going to open it up now to members' questions, and I can see Mark's hand raised and then Cliff's.
Thank you, Chair. Just a small thing. Yesterday on the, well, quite a big thing really. Yesterday on the site visit, I think it was Councillor Woodcraft who raised a question about one of the walls that seemed to have no windows in it whatsoever. There was some doubt cast on that, but then when the pictures came up, there did seem to be a very large wall without any windows in at all on the pictures. Could we just have clarification on that?
So, let me show you an image and see if you can clarify. Is it these flat panelled elevations that you're referring to.
It wasn't that particular picture. Well, has that got windows in there?
Yeah, so essentially the flat panels that you can see there, well, in both of those images, there are windows behind that, and that's kind of a mesh panel system. So it's a anodized aluminium system in bronze, and it's mesh, so you can see through it and you can see out of it. So the windows are behind that panel. It's kind of draped over the elevation.
Oh, that's interesting.
Is that to deal with south-facing sunlight?
I don't believe those ones are, because I think south is more facing the angled facade. I think it's just the design intent.
Will it look, for people walking past, like a monolithic block? Or does this gauze or whatever have some feature to it, you know?
Well, it would provide visual interest in that it's like a mesh system, so it's quite an interesting panel, and obviously you could get glimpses behind that to the windows, and obviously when the lights are on you'll see those lit up as well, so that will add some depth to that elevation.
Yeah, fair enough, thank you very much.
Cliff.
Thank you, Chair. My query is with concern to the age of the London plane trees. I'm just trying to get some feel of how many years' growth they represent. I mean, were they put in when the ring road was developed, or do they go back further than that?
I'm afraid I don't have the answer to that question as to how old they are exactly. There is a tree report which says that they are mature Category B trees. They provide they're good quality, and they provide good amenity to the area, and it anticipates, I think, a further 40 years of potential life left within them, but I can't recall whether it says how long they've actually been there.
Okay, can I move on to Marianne?
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few questions. It's about trees. Obviously, this is, a major issue here. It's accepted throughout the document that removal of trees will amount to harm, so there is clearly a need to mitigate. No one's mentioned Favell or Favell Road. Do you know which trees are marked for felling on that road? There's some ash, some cypress, oak, sycamore, all mature trees.
So I'll bring up the tree protection plan. So the tree, unfortunately it's not got that site on it. I don't have that information to hand with me. I think the majority of the tree losses and the most impactful is within this site here. I think that anything else proposed is sort of less impactful in terms of the quality of the trees and the category rating, and obviously there's going to be replacement planting within that area as well.
I'm not entirely sure they're less important, because if neither Stag or the Street Tree Partnership have been informed of the trees that are marked for the chop, then we don't know that assessment's been made. So can I just ask you, you said a few times that this document that was produced to the committee yesterday and to the Street Tree Partnership on Saturday has been agreed, but Amy can't confirm on behalf of the Sheffield Street Tree Partnership, so it's not actually confirmed, it's not been endorsed by the partnership.
So there's been some on-site meetings between the applicant and Amy to investigate the locations of potential planting, street tree planting. And so it's been agreed with them that these are the best options for street tree planting. It's not been agreed officially, I don't suppose, and the condition does require, I can find out which condition it is, but the condition does state that the further details will be required, and there is, if any of these sites aren't acceptable for any reason, then there's scope to agree alternative locations.
So, I mean, I suppose my question is quite simple. Like, we've got to this point where we're supposed to be making a decision today, yet we don't actually have a detailed plan, including the exact placement, the type of tree that has been agreed by the Sheffield Street Tree Partnership. So it does seem rather premature that we're being asked to make this decision today without that information.
I think that the condition allows scope for further discussions regarding the placement of those trees. I'm not sure from a planning perspective that we have to agree those placements with the Street Tree Partnership. I think we'll be satisfied that the work done to date with regards to with Amy and the applicant is sufficient, and that the condition allows sufficient scope to allow some wiggle room if necessary.
I'll just make one more comment. I mean, for me, I think we've got a Street Tree Partnership. I'm not going to go into the reasons why we've got one. I think that's well rehearsed and we all know why we've got one. If we've got a Street Tree Partnership, we need to listen to their recommendations, and the fact that we're being asked to make a decision without having their valued expert opinion, to me just seems premature. So I'm just going to leave that there and let someone else ask questions.
That seemed to me was more a comment than a question, and we were at questions at this time. Okay. Richard, is this a question?
I hope so. Yeah. It's a question to the highways officer, if I may. Putting trees in the middle of a roundabout, which has a reputation for accidents, collisions, etc., seems to be not best practice. And I didn't had a chance to look at that and consider whether I don't even know if they're trees or. Unfortunately, my Latin isn't as good as it used to be, and I don't know whether these are trees or bushes or whatever going in the middle of the roundabout where visuals is difficult.
Through the chair, I've not been directly involved in the siting of these trees, but my colleagues in Streets Ahead have been working with Amy and the Street Partnership to identify locations. There are some trees in there at the moment, some birch trees, and they're quite substantial trees all around Nether Edge, right at the edge of the carriageway that cars could drive into. So I don't think it would be an issue that would be set far enough into the roundabout not to really hopefully come into conflict with passing traffic.
It wasn't so much actually hitting trees, it was more that the trees would be blocking drivers' potential views of oncoming traffic. I use that roundabout virtually every day, and it is a leap of faith at times.
It's not the greatest roundabout to drive around, but the trees would be set outside of sight lines. They wouldn't be put in visibility displays or anything like that.
I have to say there's lots of roundabouts up and down the country that have trees within them, and I've certainly got a couple in my ward that I can think of, but I don't think they're the reason that accidents happen. I think the accidents are more due to the way drivers do not drive carefully.
And I have a couple more questions, if I may, Chair. Yeah, not a lot has been said about impact on the conservation area, because this is a very sizable building, and it is on the edge. And I'm just concerned that we identify these conservation areas, and are we in danger of watering down what they're meant to be doing for the city?
So we've acknowledged that the site is almost viewed within sort of two contexts. There's the university campus context, which features a lot of large modern buildings, quite an eclectic mix of buildings, and you can view the site within that context. You can also view the site within the context of the conservation area, but I think that it's adequately separated from the conservation area along Glossop Road to make sure that although it obviously will contrast with the conservation area, and we have identified that there will be some harm, we don't consider that harm to be substantial, and we consider that harm to be outweighed by the public benefits of bringing back into use this brownfield urban site.
Yeah, okay, so that's a balance consideration, isn't it? Because I mean, you could bring back the use of that site in a different way if you wanted to.
Yeah, of course, it's an unbalanced decision, and we're just looking at what's in front of us today, of course.
Thank you, Sarah. Janet, you have a question?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I assume that when this site was identified by the university for development, it must have been pretty apparent at the time that, as we've been told, a third to a quarter of the area would be affected by the root protection area of the trees. So my question is, were the university encouraged to explore alternative locations for this development? Because just down the road, if memory serves, is at the junction of Glossop Road and Durham Road is the former, I think it was Institute of Education building that's been empty for quite a long time now. It looks to me, looking at the same sort of Google Maps image, that there aren't trees that would be affected around there. So I'm wondering why a site like that wouldn't have been chosen above one that obviously was going to encounter this problem at some point. I'm not sure who can answer me that, but that's my question. Thank you, Chair.
So this site is obviously an urban plot and a development plot. The character of the site at the moment, although it has got the 3 terrace properties which do add to the character of the area and are quite attractive, the remainder of the site isn't particularly attractive with regards to that 2-storey building and the car park. The trees are attractive, however. What I'm trying to say is that the university has this site and it's a development plot. Obviously, as we've heard, they're trying to invest and they've got ambitious plans for that investment. We can only consider what's presented to us and what's in front of us, and so they've suggested that they want to develop this site, and we've considered that it wouldn't be appropriate for us to suggest they develop elsewhere.
Thank you, Sarah. Henry, and then Marianne.
Chair, couple of questions, hopefully fairly quick ones. In terms of the sustainability credentials for the building, it looks like the university have gone sort of above and beyond and have aimed for a very high standard, which is to be applauded. But it does say in the report that it's considered that it's going to exceed and meet all the relevant policies, subject to conditions being imposed about the full details of the photovoltaic array. I might have missed something. Have those conditions... Has a condition requiring the full details of the PV array been imposed at this point, or when will it be imposed?
So there are 2 conditions relating to energy. So there's condition 33, which relates to BREEAM standards, and there's condition 32, which requires a verification report to be submitted detailing the sustainability targets set out in that energy statement, which I assume you've read and are referring to, have been met, and that the targets have been completed, installed. So I think that covers that.
And the second one was says that the normal requirement for cycle parking doesn't really apply because of the proximity to the university's main cycle hub, which is a very fancy cycle hub, you know, next to the main entrance. In terms of the size of the whole campus, have the university demonstrated that that facility's got enough headroom and is currently sort of underutilised?
I haven't seen any information about the headroom in there or the capacity, but there have been discussions between the applicant and colleagues in highways about the appropriate number of cycle parking spaces that should be provided. I don't know if Mark can provide any more on that.
Yeah, I think colleagues in transport planning have been in discussion with the university, and the numbers that are being proposed in the Pocket Park, which would be secure and CCTV'd, etc., would help complement what's there currently. And there is a travel plan which monitors these things, and I think there's a commitment within the sustainable transport statement that says if more cycle parking is shown to be required, then there's scope to try and find that.
So just slightly concerned that with big central cycle hub, the university could effectively carry out multiple developments and point to the existence of the cycle hub without us monitoring whether or not that's reached capacity.
As I say, there's a working group between the university and our transport planners. There's constant dialogue, and our transport planners seem content with the provision that's proposed within the Pocket Park.
Just to add to that, condition 23 relates to the provision of what they've termed a mini hub within the park area, which will provide at least 40 cycle spaces. So it will be a secure hub area accessed by fob with CCTV and lighting, etc., to supplement the main hub. No, those 6 are not proposed anymore because so initially when the committee report was written, the cycle parking within the Pocket Park was covered but not secure parking, and so we asked for secure parking close to the building. That's the 6 that you refer to, but that's now changed because the spaces provided in the Pocket Park will be secure in this sort of mini hub, and therefore it's not necessary to have those 6 within right next to the building.
Marianne, do you have some more questions?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to pick up on the point made by John Johnson about the potential for an interim TPO. So my understanding is that John was suggesting that, you know, these trees are a valuable asset. You know, Julian's also recognised that, you know, they want a welcoming and sustainable campus. But, you know, the fact is students and staff have been campaigning to retain these trees. So if we added an interim TPO into condition 9, so that until one of the actions in condition 9 took place, that TPO would give that extra legal protection to those trees, given they are of significant value. I just wondered if there is scope for adding that into it, the condition, to strengthen it.
We couldn't require a TPO through condition. There's a separate legal process that would have to be gone through for that. But regardless of that, I think that condition is strong, and it clearly states that no trees within the site shall be removed or damaged until the details of the matters that I think were referred to, those 3 points to be achieved, have been confirmed. So I'm satisfied that there's sufficient protection of those trees without needing an interim TPO.
I mean, I think if we look at previous planning applications with conditions and, you know, perhaps some applicants not adhering to conditions, sometimes, you know, it probably would be better if we had more legal protection if we're able to provide it. I just wondered, has this committee got the ability to do that in any way with regards to requiring a TPO application?
Thank you, Chair. Just going on that point, this committee could ask for the tree officer to undertake an assessment, as members and officers will know. That's typically done through a tempo assessment. But what you'll also be familiar with is that when we come to decide whether to make a TPO, one of the issues that we need to consider is whether it's expedient to make a TPO. So I would expect that at the moment, given this application is currently recommended for approval, it probably isn't, you know, expedient in terms of the administrative process involved to sort of run both processes together. They are obviously, you know, to some degree in conflict with each other. So I think that's why probably it wouldn't meet that test of ever being expedient. There isn't such thing as an interim TPO as such. In terms of a TPO, what happens is you have the assessment, you then make the TPO, and then you've got 6 months in which to confirm the TPO, and that's the period over which you may receive objections to the TPO in that 6-month period, and then it's confirmed. Obviously, that speaker was correct. You can revoke a TPO at any time as well.
So it wouldn't be an interim TPO, but it would be revocable.
Yes, all TPOs are revocable. But obviously in terms of whether it's expedient, in terms of its amenity, that's something that the council, its normal process is to get a tree officer involved to look at the tree and whether it is something that should happen. I can't recall the section off the top of my head, but the Town and Country Planning Act does require, as part of any planning application, for the council to consider whether there are any trees that should be TPO'd. So that process should really have already been undertaken at this time, just to some extent. But again, given the threshold of whether it's expedient or not to make a TPO, obviously given that you know, we're here today with a recommended for approval in front of us, as I say, I don't expect that officers feel that it is expedient to continue with that process. But it's certainly something that you could ask officers to look at and give tree officers a response to.
I mean, on the expedience point, I think it's been reported in the press that the super lab isn't going to be built imminently, so perhaps there isn't a huge rush in that respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. Can I move to... No, I can't. We've got another question. Okay, over to you, Nikki.
Thank you, Chair. Two, what I hope are quite quick questions. The green wall, I know we've had instances elsewhere in the city where there's been criticism. I think it was with a well-known high street shop where they had a green wall, but it was sort of falling apart and wasn't maintained. So is the maintenance in the agreed maintenance plan? And then just going back to the trees that will be replacing the trees right next to the building, I'm assuming from what's in the report that it says the suitability estimate is high, so they're all ones that are deemed to be good at, I assume, dealing with air pollutants and sort of the kind of thing that the previous trees would have done. But has there been an assessment in terms of where they're placed, about things like the wind direction and, you know, how, I suppose I'm not a scientist here, but how much have we looked into that as to will they still perform at least the same function as those trees did in sort of combating air pollution?
So I'll take that one first. I don't believe that has been factored into the equation in terms of what the existing trees, their function is in terms of air quality and what the proposed ones would be. And I'm not entirely sure how we would do that, to be honest. Maybe someone somewhere could do it, but it's not something that we routinely ask for or receive. So I'm not sure where we could go with that, to be honest. In terms of the green wall, condition 17 requires details of the green wall, and let me just see, and it includes requirement for a maintenance regime as well, which would ensure that if it failed or was not thriving, then that would be addressed through that condition.
Thank you, Chair. Just following up, going back to the replacement of the trees on the main road. You say that expertise isn't available. Is it something that will come out through the negotiations with the different tree-related organisations that are being consulted? I'm assuming there's a degree of expertise there about what is suitable or not. And reading in the report, it did say that, you know, that next stage in terms of agreeing what the final trees are, that's still to happen. So I'm assuming there will be some people with expertise there who can sort of share knowledge that would be useful.
I'm not sure that their knowledge would expand to how the impact on air quality, because that's kind of a separate thing. So air quality, obviously we all know that trees are beneficial in terms of air quality, but I think the actual scientific basis and knowledge of exactly what impact it has is perhaps something that's for another discipline as opposed to those groups.
Richard.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. Yeah, it's really on condition 23 on page 22. It talks about a new storage facility in the park. I can't see, and I apologise if it's there in code, any provision for recharging points. We're trying to encourage people back to bikes. Sheffield is a hilly city. The answer seems to be in electronic powered bikes, but they do need recharging. Can we do anything to encourage the university to install some charging points in that shelter, if it's feasible?
So yeah, you're correct that there's no requirement within that condition for charging points. It's not something that we have any policy backing for, requesting that or requiring that. So my advice would be that it's not something that we can require as part of the condition.
Could we just request it then through some form of informative? Or in further discussions with the university? It seems a missed opportunity otherwise.
I suppose a directive could advise them to consider that further, but it wouldn't require them to.
Would you like to make that as a proposal, to add that as a directive?
I would certainly like that, make that proposal to add a directive along those lines.
Have a seconder?
I'll second that.
Thank you for that, Mr. Stevenson.
We still need to take the vote on it.
Unfortunately, procedurally, we still need to take a vote on it. So a show of hands will do for that. I believe that's unanimous.
Was it? Yeah, I missed that.
There you are, Richard. Marianne, you have a question.
Is it an appropriate time to make a proposal based on my previous questions? Does anyone else have more questions?
Well, I'm waiting to get to... Well,
so
we were going to go to comments next.
Okay.
And I think that would be the point where we would start looking at proposals, if there were any counter proposals to this, or to add to this application. So we'll move to members' comments, and I'll put you down first, Marianne.
Thank you. So I'd like to make a proposal that we defer this decision on two grounds. Firstly, being that it's recognised this is a beneficial green break in an otherwise hostile pedestrian environment, these trees need legal protection for as long as possible. So I would like us to explore, I'd like a TPO to be explored, and also full endorsement from the Sheffield Street Tree Partnership. I think we need a proper plan to be approved by experts to allow us to make a decision, and I think that needs to happen before we can make an informed decision.
Can I just check with Victoria, is that an acceptable proposal to put to the committee in that form?
Thank you, Chair. I think where proposals are put forward, I think it's always useful to take advice from the planning officer in terms of what they believe are the issues and whether to any extent they may have already been dealt with or considered. So I would suggest that you take advice from the planning officer at this stage. In terms of a deferral for any reason, then that's something for members to decide through the usual voting mechanism, that if they agree that they don't feel they can make the decision without that information, then they're perfectly within rights to make that decision. Obviously, I think if you move to the planning officer, and then I may want to just sort of jump in and add some things afterwards. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. So in relation to the TPO, my view is that Condition 9 already adequately protects the trees on the site, and that they won't be lost until there's certainty that the development will happen, and that there's certainty that the replacement trees have been secured. So I'm satisfied that that is sufficient in relation to those, and that a TPO isn't necessary. In relation to endorsement of the street tree planting by the Sheffield Street Tree Partnership, the documents that we've got here in the supplementary showing the tree locations and the proposals have been provided to the Street Tree Partnership, and they've had sight of those documents, and I assume that they will be feeding back in due course on those. Condition 9, sorry, not condition 9, condition 20 does require, does essentially state that alternative locations can be agreed if for whatever reason those locations aren't considered to be appropriate. So I think that there's sufficient manoeuvring room within that condition to allow any comments to potentially be assessed and acted on if considered to be appropriate by officers.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just want to make the comment in terms of TPOs. Members will be aware that sometimes when we do have confirmation TPOs at committee, you'll hear that those TPOs are being brought about because we've received an application for planning permission. So my understanding is, as I said before, it is in the legislation that as part of any planning application, tree officer does get involved and looks at the trees and makes a call at that point as to whether a TPO is required. So I believe that is something that will already be happened within the planning department of the council. In terms of the Street Tree Partnership, I just wanted to remind members that at the moment what we're talking about here is, I believe, 8 trees that are currently within private ownership, and what's being proposed is in terms of street trees, you know, the street trees to increase by 8, if you like. I understand that this has been seen as reasonable mitigation because the privately owned trees are performing some sort of street tree function given where they're located. But I just wanted to make the point that in terms of the street trees, obviously that's been increased by this proposal. So in terms of the loss in terms of street trees, there is no loss of an actual street tree. Thank you, Chair.
Well, unless I can see anyone supporting your... Does anyone want to second Marianne's proposal? Henry?
I'd be happy to second, but in terms of reasoning, given the history of street trees in Sheffield and the de facto importance of street trees as part of the makeup of the city, would it be feasible to condition that the mitigation plan is endorsed by Sheffield Street Tree Partnership at some point? Because I understand that since their original objection, the plan's been sort of put to them, but they haven't had time to respond. And I would feel much happier if the mitigation plan had their blessing, as it were.
I think we'd have to consider whether that would meet the conditions test, and I'd like to involve Vicky in that discussion. Do you think that would be reasonable or necessary? I'm not convinced it would be.
Thank you. I would agree that I'd have concerns that would meet the conditions that we talk about in terms of being reasonable. So I can understand where you're coming from, but in terms of consultation with a third party, I don't feel that it would be reasonable to put that on the applicant.
Are we at a point where we would take a vote on this or proposal that's come from Marianne and Henry? I'm saying that before we go to... No.
Order on that, though. Sorry to interrupt. If the case is being put here for that, we should be allowed to speak against it before there's any vote. The observations I was going to make are contrary to what is being proposed.
And I have a question about...
Okay, what is your reason, Mark, for opposing this?
This is why the site visits are very important. What I felt when we were there that the viewing where the pocket park was going to be and the rest of the area around it, I was satisfied that the pocket park is improving the green amenities of the area. And if more trees are going to be ending up there than the ones that we're losing, that should be borne in mind, especially as I think the building itself is an absolutely brilliant looking building. It's on the, being at the top of a slope of the hill, it will be a landmark building. It can be a centre of excellence and a major asset to Sheffield. We should not defer, we should enthusiastically support this project. It would be madness to obstruct it in any way when what we need is inward investment for Sheffield and as much of it as we can get. Therefore, I will be voting for the recommendation and against the proposal over there.
Nikki, did you want to say something on this?
I just wanted some clarity. Thank you, Chair. So, is Marianne's proposal that we should defer or have the TPO, or was it both? I suppose I'm interested in the idea of, I want to know, in terms of deferring a decision until a third party has had time to look at it, I suppose I'm interested in how much time did they have, and secondly, what kind of power are we giving them in terms of, is it like a veto or is it just a comment, and where does that all come back to, and who makes the decision? I suppose I'm not clear, going back to what we were talking about before, Sarah, about who are the people who have the final say on which trees go where?
Good question. So that would be us in combination with Amy, us to decide, I suppose, are they okay in terms of the visual amenity that we're going to get from them, and Amy in terms of the practicalities of can they actually be provided, because obviously when you put in street tree and there's a lot of underground constraints that could get in the way of that. I believe that the Street Tree Partnership have had approximately a week to look at that information. Don't quote me on that, that's an approximate figure. Like you said, they are a third party, and whilst we would like to work with them and we do appreciate their input, ultimately they're a third party and we are assessing the merits of the tree planting in terms of, as I suggested, sort of the visual amenity and the practicalities of doing so. So I wouldn't necessarily want to hold this up to seek that formal agreement, especially seeing as those discussions have, informally been processed anyway.
So, from what I can see, we want to make sure that we've got the right trees in the right place, we've got the power to make that happen. We're willing to listen to whoever has opinions on that, and I would suggest go beyond that and get some expertise. Just looking on the internet, there's some amazing free software out there to assess what trees are good at dealing with air pollution that have been put together by very credible academics. I know we have the sort of binary situation of this committee, but it seems to me, given the the positive interactions we've had with the university, everyone wants to make this work. So could we put some kind of, sorry, I always forget which one's which in terms of the condition and the other one, suggestion that we all act like grown-ups and get together and decide that we've got good quality trees in the right places and listen to all the right parties without having to go through lots of legalese. No offence, solicitor.
Well, can I suggest that once we allow officers to work on that as part of the application, assuming we get the application passed, rather than get involved in
well, as long, I suppose,
counter proposals
on the condition that those who are interested get to have their say, and if people have got strong opinions about the type of trees and where they're going, that we listen to that and take it on board. I know that doesn't deal with the TPO issue, but, you know, I definitely want to make sure that we've got good like for like, if not better, trees going in there. And that people, can we agree that you'll have a meeting with the tree partnership to listen to what they have said now they've had time to absorb it?
So we have, as I've said, sent that information over to them, and of course we will consider what they say. Ultimately, we are the decision maker, and we will be making sure that these trees are the best they can be in terms of the function they need to provide, the street tree function, in terms of the suitability of the planting. So we have sent that information on, and I'm sure that we will consider what comes back, but I wouldn't want to stipulate that, you know, we have to be swayed by what is said there, which would make me reluctant to kind of put that into the decision notice any further.
For me, it's about listening, yeah, being balanced and taking on board good advice if it's good advice. And, you know, going back to what you said about whether we have that expertise around the science of what makes a good sort of tree for dealing with pollution, you know, that sounds like a really good thing that we should know more about, and it should be part of our judgments that we make. Like I say, I've just had a quick Google and found some useful things.
I think it's worth bearing in mind, Chair, sorry, that the tree officer will obviously also be involved in that decision making, who has that arboricultural experience. And if I sort of remind everybody that we're making decisions in accordance with the development plan unless other material considerations, etc. So you know, it's about being proportionate. Yes, we will seek all the advice we need to seek, but as Sarah says, we are the decision maker. It boils down to us to make that final decision in conjunction with all the experts that we have available to us.
I was just thinking, probably for anything involving trees, it'd be useful to have the tree officer here thinking about it. I know, easy to say in retrospect. Yeah, I don't assume any bad faith on the part of officers in all of this. So I think, you know, if you talk and listen to people and get good expert advice, that's good enough for me. I know that doesn't deal with protecting the trees, so, you know, go back to Marianne on that.
Can someone remind me where we are at this point?
Chair, I believe you've got a proposal and that's been seconded, but I do think councillors' further comments did suggest that they were currently unclear about what the reasons for the deferral were. So I think it may be useful just to make a check that what the proposal is for, and that in that form it's also been seconded. Thank you, Chair.
Can you remind us,
Do I need
what
to
your
reiterate the proposal? Right,
the deferral is for?
Right, okay, I propose a deferral on the basis that we know it's accepted that these trees are a valuable asset, a beneficial green break in an otherwise hostile pedestrian environment. Therefore, we need to explore some legal protection for those trees to strengthen Condition 9. Furthermore, the Sheffield Street Tree Partnership have not had a chance to endorse these plans. We've got a street tree partnership, therefore we need to take their expert views into account in order to be able to make an informed decision, and I propose to defer on those two grounds.
But the street tree partnership would only be able to comment on where the new trees would be likely to go, because the existing trees, although they may be acting as street trees, are actually on private land, the land owned by the university.
Yes, so it's accepted that mitigation is needed because they're performing the function of street trees, but the Street Tree Partnership haven't had chance to look at the proposal, so we need to know that the right tree is going in the right place. And until we have the endorsement from the partnership, we don't know that that's actually going to happen.
Are we okay to have a vote on that?
If you've got a proposal there for a deferral, to ask officers to look at making a TPO, and also to give a third party a chance to comment on some plans. I think it is worth noting at the moment that in terms of those plans, what you've got here are proposals that are going to be further you know, sort of worked on and later on approved by your officers. So you really just be asking the third party to comment on plans that aren't currently sort of in a sort of formal finalised state. So you know, to my mind, the reasons for deferral to my mind don't really stack up. And just in terms of the first reason, I have just Googled like everybody else. There is section 197 of the Town and Country Planning Act, and it is the duty of the planning authority to, and excuse me for reading out verbatim, to ensure whenever it is appropriate that in granting planning permission for any development, adequate provision is made by the imposition of conditions for the preservation or planting of trees, and to make such orders, those being TPOs, as appear to be necessary in connection with the grant of such permission. So, as I said before, my understanding is that tree officers you know, do get involved in these applications at an early stage, and if a TPO was felt to be necessary here, that would have already have happened. And as I alluded to earlier, I believe that's because they don't believe it's expedient, given that obviously there's no current threat to these trees, given that you know, the applicant's working with us and have not given any indication that they may consider removing the trees other than with planning permission behind them. In terms of, say, going back to the second reason in terms of the street tree partnership, I don't know how much value members would put on what they think of the current proposals that aren't currently finalised, because obviously after permission's been granted they may change for whatever reason because of the sort of the expert advice that we'd be getting in terms of our own tree officers, etc. So they may develop, and obviously I don't feel that it would necessarily be reasonable to sort of you know, get them set in stone at this stage. And again, just to reiterate the other point, is that although these are performing street tree function, they're not currently street trees. We're not losing any current street trees. So really in terms of a street tree perspective, this is, you know, as mitigation for this loss of these privately owned trees, street trees numbers will increase. So yeah, that's just something to bear in mind. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I'm going to take the vote now. All those in favour of Marianne and Henry's proposal? Let's see a show of hands. All those against? Abstentions? Okay, your proposal is lost. Are there any more? I think a lot of work has been done by officers with the applicant to get this to where it is, with a whole raft of mitigations, which have turned a promising project into one that could be really outstanding if they can bring it about. And that will do a lot for science in this city and our ability to deliver good science education. So I certainly want to speak up for this application and certainly value the comments made by Mark earlier on this. Does anyone else want to comment before we go to a vote? Okay, we will proceed to a vote. By show of hands, can I see all those in favour of this application? That is carried. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Can I see the number of against? Against. Any abstentions? And one abstention. Okay, that application is carried. Thank you all very much for that. I think members could do with a short break. Can I have people back at, should we say 10 minutes, and return at 3:45 for the second application this afternoon. Thank you. Picking up with item 7B, and that's planning application number 24/01876/REM, land between Hollin Busk Road and Broomfield Grove and Broomfield Lane, and that's in Sheffield S36 2AQ. And that's on page 61 of the agenda. And I'm going to ask Andrew to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. As you just described, the site is located on the south-east edge of Stocksbridge, on fields that are located between Hollin Road, Broomfield Lane and Broomfield Grove. As you can see, it's irregular in its shape. The size of the site combined is approximately 5 hectares in size. The site already benefits from outline planning permission that was granted on appeal by the Planning Inspectorate in February last year. That decision established that a development of up to 92 dwellings on the site is acceptable in principle. Existing residential areas are positioned on both sides of the site to the north, east and west. To the north are areas of formal green space, including a youth centre, Stocksbridge Cricket Club, Stocksbridge Parksteel's Brackenmore football ground, and a number of community football pitches which are located directly opposite. To the south and the southeast are further fields in the direction of Deepcar. However, on a number of those, planning permission is in place for a development of 69 dwellings. That particular development is currently in the process of being constructed by Stonebridge Homes on land off the junction between Carr Road and Hollin Lane. This photo shows the view across the site from the northwest corner on Broomfield Lane. The site consists of fields at the present time which have been used for grazing purposes in the past. There are a few details to describe in the main body of the site itself, aside from some dry stone walls, which currently demark the field boundaries and on the site frontages. Some of the neighbouring dwellings can be seen around the edges of the site that are on Broomfield Lane and Grove. This photo is taken from the west of the site on Hollin Busk Road. Again, it shows the main body of the site mainly consists of open fields with stone walls around the edges and some of those internally. Those properties on which neighbour the site on Broomfield Lane and Grove visible just at the far end of the photo. This one is taken from Broomfield Lane in a relatively central position from the north of the site. It indicates the relationship between the existing properties on Broomfield Lane and Grove a bit more clearly. The main access into the development would be in this part of the site, just beyond the bus stop on the right-hand side. The relatively straight alignment of the highway can be seen in this location. As has already been mentioned, the appeal decision on the outline application established that development can take place for 92 houses on the site. In addition, it gave approval for it to be served by 2 access points. One is to be taken from Broomfield Lane to the north of the site. The second access would serve a lesser number of dwellings and is positioned to the west of the site on Hollin Busk Road. The current application seeks approval for the remaining reserved matters. Those are the layout, scale, appearance and landscaping details for the development. The plans contain a mixture of detached and semi-detached dwellings with a few terrace runs of 3 properties. The development will mainly be for 3 and 4 bedroom houses with a lesser number of 2 bedroom and 5 bedroom dwellings included in the mix. The layout also includes areas of open space and soft landscaping, a children's play area and 3 surface water drainage attenuation basins. 10% of the dwellings would be affordable housing provided on the site. Here are some examples of the proposed house types and materials mix. The properties would mostly be 2 storeys, with some properties having accommodation in the roof space. A pair of semi-detached bungalows is also proposed. The properties are proposed to be constructed from a variety of buff and red bricks, with some feature properties in reconstituted stone. Roof tiles are proposed to be a mixture of dark grey and terracotta red. The site rises up gently from the Broomfield Lane site frontage towards the rear and towards Hollin Busk Road. The indicative cross-sections on the slide taken from 4 different areas of the development indicate how the change in levels would be addressed in order to create gently stepped streets and level access to the future dwellings. However, a condition is proposed to agree the final details to ensure that plot levels are deemed suitable from a visual and residential amenity perspective. Here's a 3D image of the proposed development. This is the indicative view from Broomfield Lane on the site frontage. 15 different house types are proposed, which would see variation across the development. The houses will be positioned around the central area of green space, which would also include the attenuation ponds that would be seeded with a meadow and wildflower planting mix. Ecological considerations were mostly addressed at the outline stage. Surveys established there were no protected species on the site. However, the appeal decision did set out requirement for the development to achieve 10% biodiversity net gain. The reserve matters plans included a number of on-site BNG provisions, including the retention of 2 fields in the southwest part of the site, over areas of green space and the suds ponds. In addition, a variety of new trees and hedgerows are proposed to be planted as part of the wider landscaping scheme. Despite those on-site details, a level of off-site provision is also going to be required in order to achieve 10% net gain. This is proposed to be achieved by the purchase of credits from a certified habitat bank. The cost of those being calculated at £200,000 and would require a supplementary Section 106 agreement in addition to the one that has already been exists as part of the outline. This forms part of the recommendation. In addition to the on-site BNG provisions, the applicant has also provided an indicative species enhancement plan. This shows that development can incorporate a wide variety of measures, including bat and bird nesting boxes, log piles for insects and invertebrates, hedgehog highways, and corridors suitable for foraging and commuting bats. The report explains that the applications have been the subject of 2 rounds of publicity. 19 objections were received during the first exercise and a further 7 in response to the amended plans. In summary, the main concerns expressed by local residents include objections to the principle of development, concerns about highways' impacts on the area, harm to residential amenity, appearance of development, harm to ecology, lack of affordable housing, and coal mining legacy issues. Stocksbridge Town Council also objects, raising similar themes about the highways' implications of the development and the impacts on the residential amenity of existing properties. The committee report also sets out the assessment of the proposals that have been carried out by officers. Just to summarise the main points, it explains that the appeal decision has established that development can take place and that the number of 92 dwellings is acceptable. In addition, the outline permission also approved the means of access for the development and that can be accommodated within the area, having regard to wider highways considerations. The officer assessment has therefore been limited to considering the acceptability of the plans in relation to the remaining reserved matters. The assessment has found the plans to be acceptable having regard to considerations such as the design of the proposed layout, appearance, the amount and type of open space provision, separation distances to neighbouring properties, and landscaping. Planning obligation and infrastructure requirement-wise, the development is liable for community infrastructure levy. In addition, it provides the 10% affordable housing, which is secured at the outline stage. The existing Section 106 agreement also secures future maintenance arrangements for the suds ponds and the open space, including the children's play area. Overall, therefore, it's considered that reserved matters plans are acceptable. The recommendation is one of approval, therefore, subject to completion of a Section 106 in line with the terms set out in the report. I'll just mention a couple of small details in terms of the supplementary report. So that recommends the addition of 2 highways conditions and directives following a review of the agenda code out by highways DC officers. Aside from that, I'll hand back over now to the chairs. That concludes the officer presentation.
Thank you, Andrew. we've got two speakers making representations to this application. Neither are objecting. So I've got Mark Jones and Michael Edgar. Would Mark like to come to the desk? If it's not switched on, so you'll want to press the button that's on to your right. Yeah, that's it. And you have 5 minutes, or up to 5 minutes.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mark Jones from Barrett and David Wilson Homes. We are dedicated to build high-quality, thoughtfully designed homes, and we have been awarded the maximum 5-star customer rating from the Home Builders Federation for the 15th consecutive year, the only major national house builder to achieve this. We see Sheffield as a key housing market to invest in and bring forward much-needed family accommodation to address the widely accepted need for more housing in the city. As you have heard this afternoon, the application is for reserved matters, and it's for 92 new homes, including 10% affordable properties. The proposal includes high-quality on-site public open space, extensive landscaping, sustainable drainage systems, including 3 attenuation basins on site, and an area of biodiversity net gain. The principle of development and vehicular access serving the site has been previously secured under the outline application. The construction period will take approximately 2 years and will generate an estimated 114 full-time construction jobs and an estimated 115 indirect jobs. The community infrastructure levy contribution will just be over £493,000. Subject to planning permission being granted and the discharge of planning conditions, we are keen to make a start on site early this year. Therefore, we hope that you can support your office's recommendation for approval today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. If you'd like to leave the button pressed on, and then Michael can come to the desk. Hello, Michael. Like Mark, you'll have up to 5 minutes to speak, but you don't have to use all the 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll try not to. Michael Edgar from DLP. We're the agents for the application. Without going over anything you've already heard, it's a wide range of housing proposed on the site, 2 to 5 bedroom properties. The affordable housing is 3 bedroom for the provision across that. Separation distances between the proposed and existing properties meets the relevant guidelines, and we've worked with officers to make changes to make sure that's the case throughout, and provided additional landscape boundary treatment in areas where additional screening might be helpful. As you've heard, biodiversity net gain to get the full 10% has not been possible entirely within the red line boundary of the site, partly because there's a lot of public access provided to the main central open space, so we don't get the level of benefit there that we might. However, there's a lot of habitat proposed within the green infrastructure: neutral grassland, modified grassland, mixed scrub, bioswales associated with the sods and the detention basins, and urban trees proposed as well. 96 new trees in total proposed for the site. That said, it won't meet the full 10% within the red line boundary, and therefore the Section 106 variation is recommended in order for us to buy those off-site credits to ensure that provision is fully met in accordance with the previous appeal outline permission. There's a big range of hedgerow provision actually in the main public open space. It doesn't benefit to the BNG calculation, unfortunately, because there isn't hedgerow on site already, one of the nuances of that. We've also worked proactively with your officers throughout the determination process to deal with comments and representations from residents and statutory consultees. We've repositioned plots around the public open space to frame it better, create a sense of arrival on the eastern access road in particular. We've used the orientation of plots to give a dual aspect, provide key anchors around that as well. That will improve natural surveillance. And we've also improved footpath connections from Hollin Busk Road into the centre of the site and across to the play areas as well. So There's been a real collaborative effort on that front. We've been able to reduce the impact of car parking spaces in the street scene as well by breaking it up a little bit more, by using tandem bays with additional separation on the frontages. We've simplified drives along the southern boundary, which has provided for a turning head as well. And generally speaking, street scenes have been given a more consistent frontage by reconfiguring those reorientation of those front plots. There's been an amendment made to the detention basins as well to ease concerns Yorkshire Water had about easements in the area, but we're outside all of those now in terms of those discussions. And we'll retain an open appearance to those basins by using hedges rather than formalised fencing as well, so the open space area retains its integrity. Supporting this recommendation today will make a valuable contribution to family accommodation at a time when there isn't a 5-year supply of land in the city. We've worked positively with your officers to develop the scheme before you. We welcome the recommendation and hope you'll grant permission. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Michael. Andrew, is there anything you wanted to add to that or pick up on?
Not a great deal, I don't think. I think all the comments from both speakers are welcome. I think it, you know, especially what Michael's just been saying there, that just really does illustrate the level of detail that goes into the discussions and negotiations and everything about design, site layout, landscaping, biodiversity, net gain, before we reach a point of saying that the plans are acceptable enough for us to support them and to bring them to this committee. So yes, thank you for setting out things in that extra level of detail, Michael.
Okay, I'm going to open it up to members' questions. Henry, then Cliff.
Please hear it's a very short one, Chair. Is condition 12 going to be in effect in perpetuity?
Yes, is that the one to remove permitted development rights? Yeah, we've done that across the board for the whole development, just on the basis that, again, I think I mentioned it briefly, but Michael just mentioned it in more detail. So obviously we have got a lot of properties which neighbour the site, especially to the north and east, on Broomfield Lane and Broomfield Grove. So the layout as it's designed at the minute has acceptable separation distances to those properties. And then you've got other situations as well where some of the houses are like on corner plots and things like that. So if it was just unchecked where permitted development rights come to the equation and start people start adding on extensions and things like that without coming through as first, it could potentially erode those garden sizes and separation distances. So what we're saying now, it could change the situation from where we're saying now those distances are acceptable. If they add on an extension in the future, they might not be, so we just want to make sure that everybody has to apply to us first so that we can assess those proposals and make sure that they would be acceptable in order so we can protect existing residents' amenity to that level, extra level.
Presumably this is going to afford greater protection against misconnections, because we've had a few problems elsewhere in Sheffield with open water or surface attenuation schemes. So that's what I was asking, but
yes, sorry, Councillor Nottage, what was that about the surface water attenuation?
Oh, well, we've had problems elsewhere in Sheffield where misconnections have contaminated surface water attenuation schemes because of permitted development. And I just wanted to check that condition 12 was in perpetuity, so that if anybody is doing extra development, it comes through us, and presumably they'll be advised by officers about making the correct connection at that point.
Yeah, it is, but yeah, I'd say we've put it on for a slightly different reasoning, but it would have the same effect because it just means that now, if once these houses are built, if anybody wants to build future extensions or outbuildings, it means they will have to apply for planning permission first.
Thank you. Cliff.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so just for the record, outline planning permission was previously granted on appeal. Have any relevant objections come up since then that we need to be thinking about?
Well, I think I've said that the committee report that explains that we received, I think it was 19 objections to these reserved matters plans during the first round of publicity. We then did a further consultation when the plans changed and got a further 7 objections in. I think some of those objections are still trying to raise concerns with the principle of development, which you know, that at this stage that isn't a consideration for us, because you have to trace the clock back to the outline that has firmly established the principle of development is acceptable and that 92 houses can be built on this site. It's also the flavour of the objections as well also covers themes about the number of developments taking place in the Stocksbridge area, and how that's going to impact some of the main junctions at the minute, which are already busy. But again, the assessment of the main highways impacts was part and parcel of the outline application, so we can't really take that into consideration now. And the access points were also fixed as well, being from Broomfield Lane and Hollin Bus Road. So we're more focused now just on what's the reserve matters are mainly concerned, the detail of the development within the red line edge and not beyond that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Marianne.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question on buses, just for clarity. I know this is contained in the supplementary document as well. So the loss of the bus stop, obviously I'm worried about, you know, poor public transport links and, you know, people being reliant on having numerous cars per family, but it seems to suggest that that bus stop was only used for a school service anyway. So are there actually no buses that aren't school services going down that road anyway?
Yeah, so if you can see just on that photo that's on the screen, so there's 2 bus stop poles there on both sides of the road. So this is on Broomfield Lane. So the one on the right hand side, that is quite close to where the new entrance is going to be formed into the development. What Simca have told us, because it's their responsibility now, because they've taken on the role of the PTE, they've said that it's just a part-time bus service that uses it, that's just for school buses. So they said that the one opposite, if it does need to come out, the one on the opposite side of the road will suffice for both sides, but they would want re-stickering doing on the remaining bus pole, which would be on the left-hand side of the image.
They could pick up and drop off.
Yes, yeah, that's right. I mean, there is also a condition on going back to the outline. I'll just look it up now, 1 second. And then I might just bring in Mark to see if he's got any further thoughts. But I think condition 13 on the outline, where I think ultimately it's going to result in that applicant having to enter into a Highways Section 278 agreement, where it says that when they create that new priority junction, then they have to do things like alterations to traffic signs, road markings, lighting columns and general street furniture necessary as a consequence of the development. So that did lead me to also thinking that there's a possibility that if the bus stop pole does need to be taken out, that it might be able to be repositioned as part of the works we require through that condition. But I might just bring in Mark at this point.
Yeah, hi Chair. I think Simca have just misread the plans and that the access is far enough away from that bus stop. It's just precautionary, that directive, in case the decisions made on safety grounds that it would benefit from being transferred to the other side of the road, essentially. But I don't think that will need to be the case. I think it will stay in situ.
So you think it'll probably stay anyway? Okay. And then I just had a question on page 81. So when it's talking about flooding and the suds basins, so there's an environment agency requirement that the surface water drainage has to be capable of dealing with a 1 in 100 year storm plus a certain amount to accommodate climate change. The report says 40%. If you look at the comments from the Lead Local Flood Authority, which is the council, there seems to be a bit of to and froing about that figure and that it actually should be 50%. Just wondered if you could enlighten us regarding that.
Yeah, I think just the EA haven't been involved because you've now got local authorities and this council in the role of the lead local flood authority. So those comments will have come in internal from, you know, our own in-house drainage experts. Which is the bit that I've seen the bit where you've said where it's going to be constructed with that.
Near the top of page 81.
So page 81, it says 40% to accommodate climate change, and it also goes on to say the council's lead local flood authority has raised no objections. But I mean, I've sort of looked into the technical note, and that, you know, there certainly do seem to be some objections that have been raised. In response, the applicant has put forward some quite technical arguments, which I don't think any of us are really equipped to actually fully understand, but it doesn't look like that's been fully resolved, whether it should be. It seems to me that it should be 50% because that's what the Environment Agency are suggesting, but the applicant is arguing that it should be 40% for some technical reasons.
I'm just trying to find where that 50% figure has come from because, yeah, just to reiterate, it's not the Environment Agency that are involved as a consultee on this application.
I wasn't suggesting they were, I was just saying it's the Environment Agency guidance that needs to be followed. It's in the technical note from the consulting engineers. It's not in the. It's not in this pack. I had to look for it.
Right. Okay. Well, I think. I mean, ultimately, you know, we consult the relevant experts within the council on a wide variety of matters. So obviously, when it's the highway stuff, we consult in highways, and what we consulted is our drainage lead local flood authority on this application. I know it's been to them half a dozen times with packages of information and different variations of the plans to get to the point that they've effectively signed off on it to say they're happy with this design. So yes, I've got no reason to doubt that part of the report on page 81 where it says that the council's lead local flood authority as the local drainage authority has raised no objections to the proposed scheme. I mean, we do have still some additional control over it anyway, because you've obviously got one set of conditions, what you can see now, which is part of the Reserved Matters recommendation. But I would just mention as well, we've got an additional about approximately 30 conditions, which are on the outline. Planning permission, which the development is bound by as well, so yeah, it's 28, not 30. And yeah, one of the conditions is number 6, and they've got it's a pre-commencement condition, which requires surface water drainage design, including calculations and appropriate model results, to be submitted and approved by us before the development can begin. So I think that taking all those things on board, I think we're content with the advice that we're being given, that the proposals are acceptable from a drainage perspective.
Chair, could I just also add that on page 71, it also details that details of the Suds Basin is also included in the existing 106 agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't seem to answer the point that, you know, there is some contention whether it should be 40 or 50. So I wondered if there is scope for, you know, making sure that it is 50% for allowance for climate change. Bearing in mind this is a high flood risk area, you know, attenuation is like really key in this area.
I think we're not going to get really to the bottom of this here, but if this application is passed, can I just suggest that officers go away and have a look at that discrepancy and see whether there is scope?
Yeah, because I mean, at the minute, I can't think that this is going to come from, you know, that 50% figure will be enshrined in any of our own planning policies. So if we are quoting some technical standards from the Environment Agency, they're not necessarily in use or enforced by our authority. And I think it would have to, you know, ultimately similar to what Diana said when we were discussing the previous applications, ultimately we're required to decide planning applications in accordance with our own development plan and other material planning considerations, which include the National Planning Policy Framework. I don't think this 50% figure is enshrined in either of those, so it sounds to me as though it's some separate technical standards which aren't our own.
Sorry, I realise it's quite technical. I just thought I'd raise it because it looked like it, yeah, there was a bit of an inconsistency there. So I just wondered if clarification could be provided, but I realise it is quite technical and probably beyond our knowledge and expertise.
Thank you, Marion. Can I move on to Mary?
Thank you. My question is really to the developer. You mentioned the number of jobs that are...
Mary, you can't. Sorry.
That's that.
No, the developer has already had their opportunity to speak. You can ask the question to Andrew.
Well, I was just interested in how many of those jobs will be from Sheffield firms and contractors, and how many apprenticeships might be included in that workforce. That was just the question.
Don't know if you can shed any light on it.
I can't answer it directly in terms of giving quantifying a number. However, the good news is that I have observed that on the conditions that were imposed at outline stage, it required the submission of an inclusive employment and development plan designed to maximise opportunities for both immediate and ongoing employment from the operational phase of the development to be submitted to us in collaboration with Talent Sheffield. So I would hope that would result in local employment opportunities happening as a result of that condition.
Mark, you have a question?
There's been a huge amount of development in the Stocksbridge area lately. The road system there was built for a much more compact community. Are you happy that this latest one of the many developments is not going to be the one that finally overwhelms the road system of our small community, including the main road to Sheffield? Thank you.
I think that one might be for the highways officer, Mark.
Well, I think I'd come in first if that's okay. I think I would just have to reiterate that, you know, that was something which was part and parcel of the assessment of the outline, not the reserved matters. So, yeah, the outline considered everything to do with the principle of development, so that it was submitted with a transport assessment which considered the implications of the development on the wider highway network. So once the planning inspector had come to the decision to allow the appeal. It's not, those issues aren't for debate now as part of this application. We're specifically only considering the reserve matters, which were, you know, limited to internal site layout, appearance, landscaping, and scale in terms of like the story house and footprints of the properties. So yeah, that's not something we can consider at this stage now.
Mark, did you want to add anything to that?
Only briefly. I mean, the outline application did consider committed development, stuff that had been approved that hadn't been built yet. So the other development surrounding here that's under construction was considered at the time and reported at the outline stage, and some quite robust assessment was undertaken showing, and it was reported in the committee report, that the generation from this development that would pass through junctions in and around the area. But just you were mentioning about the sort of the highway network and its ability to, you know, handle traffic. I'd say that there has been a bit of infrastructure improvement in that when the Hounsfield retail development was constructed, there was a private steelworks access road up to the bypass which was regularly shut, and that development actually upgraded that road, and it's now part of the adopted highway network and actually does provide another route out of Stocksbridge onto the bypass and helps, if you like, relieve the Vorton Hill Sheffield Road junction. So there has been as much done as can be done. That's always the case.
Thank you. Nikki.
Thank you, Chair. I was looking at the affordable housing section of your report and thinking it's really welcome that I think it's 10% they're meeting in terms of affordable housing. Thinking back, I'm not sure if you were there, Andrew, at our last meeting when I think there was a 30% requirement for a new development, and it got negotiated down to a financial equivalent of 3.7, and even that was seen as not acceptable by the developer. So this is very welcome. I just wanted, in terms of my own learning, to be reminded what is the definition of affordable housing in this context, both in terms of the purchasing prices and the rental prices.
Yeah, so we have to use the National Planning Policy Framework to look at the definitions section part as to what officially constitutes affordable housing. What was secured with this application does just date back to the outline, and there is a Section 106 agreement already in place. So the breakdown of it, there's going to be 5 properties for affordable rent, 2 for shared ownership, and 2 as first homes for first-time buyers. So I couldn't go explain things in that level of detail at the minute, because I imagine that the applicant hasn't got as far yet of devising prices for how much these houses are going to be cost on the open market. But obviously what might happen with some of these properties, they might end up with being transferred to a registered provider of affordable housing and then distributed that way.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm going to move now to members' comments. If anyone wants to speak on it. Glynis.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm really pleased to see that this time we don't have to talk about Swift boxes or anything else, because they've made allowance for virtually every animal going on the site, which is brilliant. But they don't say anything about bee bricks, so that's something that I might bring up another time. Thank you.
Thank you for raising that. Perhaps our officers will look into what can be done on that one to come back at a later date. But yes, it is very pleasing to see the amount of biodiversity work that has gone in, even though they can't meet the 10% that would be the ideal, but scope has been made for that to be allocated. The difference to be allocated elsewhere. And like Nikki, I'm very pleased to see that there is there is a that 10% allocation for affordable homes on the site. That will be much needed. Sadly, it's never enough, but at least it is moving in the right direction. But hopefully we'll get other affordable housing from other sources in the coming years. I think I would also add that the mitigation work all around the site, I think, is really welcome. I think it's done a lot to allay a lot of the worries that people had about this site. No one wants to see land loss, and I'm sure a lot of people in the Stocksbridge and Deepcar areas feel that they're living in a village, but of course those villages have grown over the years quite substantially. So I'm going to ask members now to take a vote on whether to approve the application or not. And can I ask all those in favour to raise their hands? One against? I believe that. Any abstentions? I think I saw every hand go up, so that was unanimous. Thank you all very much for that. We can now move on to item 8, and that's record of planning appeal submissions and decisions on page 87 of the agenda. Does anyone want to question or comment that? I'll just quickly say that it's pleasing again to see that most of the appeals, the inspector did side with the local authority. The only one that the appeal that was allowed was over advertising close to the city centre. So it's good to see quite a good record being established by on appeals from our officers. Item 9, date of the next meeting. Sorry, so you're all happy to note that report? Nearly missed that one, sorry. Item 9, date of the next meeting, and that will be on Tuesday the 11th of February, 2 p.m. in the Town Hall, which means the site visits will be the day before. Thank you all very much for that.